This week, Dave Lewis from 1Password is with us to discuss single sign-on shortcomings, shadow IT, and agentic AI. Then we have a topic segment on whether AI is really going to replace a bunch of jobs or if that's all OpenAI sponsored bluster. Finally, in the enterprise security news, not much interesting funding to discuss, though there is a lot of funding. It's all like really early stage stuff. Securonics acquires Threat Quotient. Cellebrite acquires Corellium. That sounds a lot like a rock bought a stone or a gem or something like that. Cellebrite and Corellium. They sound like something a geologist would be interested in. Yet another free vulnerability database. ChatGPT can now clandestinely record meetings, along with a bunch of other stuff. It's not that big of a bit of news. Threat detection resources, a very expensive Zoom call for the victim. Should we stop using SOC 2s? Should we give up on least privilege? And how much did it cost to change HBO to HBO Max, then back to Max, then back to HBO Max? We're going to find out about all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1Password. You can't protect what you can't see. Everyone knows that, right? That's why RunZero gives you total visibility across your internal and external attack surfaces. Worried about unknown and unmanageable devices? They've got those covered too. RunZero also helps you illuminate all types of exposures, even the elusive ones. They go beyond CVs to tackle the hard stuff, even 0 days. No agents, no authentication, just crazy deep data about your assets and exposures that focuses on the risks that actually matter. Not an endless sea of CVEs. Go try it for free and start seeing results in minutes. Visit securityweekly.com/RunZero to get started. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National Barcode Day. Wow, what fun. Can you imagine the guy that came up, hey, you know what, we need this glorious national day that we will call National Barcode Day. Amazing. This is episode 413 on Thursday, June 26, 2025, except we're recording on Friday, June 27th. Don't worry about it. We'll just pretend it's Thursday, and we recorded all this in a row. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining us is the Dean of Data Science, the Knight of Neurodiversity, the Watcher of Data Center Waste, Jackie McGuire. How you doing, Jackie?
I'm all right. I feel like after 20 ounces of cold brew, I should feel better, but it's 11 a.m. and I am still just dragging ass like a dog that got into the garbage. Like I don't know. Today can go to hell. I usually try to be like, hey, I'm great, but like I'm just so tired this week.
Sometimes just no amount of caffeine is going to get you there, and you just need to reset. Mm-hmm. and start over, which you're not going to be able to do until tomorrow. So condolences.
That's all right. This always cheers me up. So I was happy that this was the next thing.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I hope the audience feels the same way.
Yeah.
All right, so this interview is sponsored by 1Password, and today's topic comes from one of Dave's talks, The Illusion of Control, Shadow IT, SSO Shortcomings, and the True Path to Security. But Dave assures me that we'll be able to segue smoothly into Echo Leak and agentic AI, so we'll try to find our way there. We're excited to have the aforementioned Dave Lewis, Global Advisory CISO at 1Password, with us today. And you might know Dave from his hijinks at Duo Security or Akamai, or from his many speaking engagements at conferences, or from his current podcast, Chasing Entropy, or if you're really old, like me and Dave, his podcast and website, Liquid Matrix.
Yep.
Welcome. How you doing,
Thank
Dave?
you very much. Good. Thank you for having me on. This is a wonderful quid pro quo after you were on my podcast, so I really enjoy the opportunity to be here.
I like to think it was coincidence. It's like we hadn't talked in a while, and you were the keynote at B-Sides Knoxville, which I run, and then I was on your podcast, and then you were on my podcast. I don't think you keynoting led to 1Password sponsoring us. I'm assuming that was coincidence.
That was a
But
coincidence. We actually were going to do that all along, so wonderful comedy of errors that all came together in a nice way.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
And I know, Dave, I know you and I have met before, and I could not tell you where if you gave me $1 million. So I would guess probably a DEF CON or one of the side cons at DEF
More than
CON.
likely, yes.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is I realize in hindsight now that I actually walked past you in the hallway at Reinforce.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. So let's get into it here. So yeah, I think we're at an interesting point in cybersecurity where, I think we have a lot of the things that we need, but we almost have too many things, right? There's just so much going on. Security is constantly getting more responsibility for more things, and it's all connected to passwords and identity. And even on the attack side, when you look at that stuff, everything is attached to identity and passwords. So I think it's a great time to have this conversation. And it's interesting. Like I remember the first time we played with SSO, it was a company that doesn't exist anymore. But they kind of plugged into Active Directory, and it just seemed like an amazing idea that we just have 1Password that we use to log into everything. And it just, like many things in tech and in security, like you see a new technology, and we're doing it now with AI, right? AI is going to fix everything. It seemed like SSO was going to fix everything. It was going to make it so much simpler. And to some extent, I think all of us use a lot of SSO, but it's all disjointed. It's all disconnected. So Dave, some of your thoughts here.
You absolutely nailed it. There is that disconnect, and there is this artificial sense of calm that's associated with it, because the problem is that when organizations deploy it, they tend to do it just around core or critical assets as opposed to wall to wall. And as a result, there are lots of gaps that can present themselves either by normal day-to-day business or shadow IT systems that may get stood up. So it's one of those things where we realize that something has to be done in a better fashion to be able to catch all of those other, applications and what have you that may be traversing your connections. And the other piece too is with SSO, you have to pay ostensibly an SSO tax in order to get your software to work on it. So I've seen so many times where it's like, oh, your widget or grapple grommet will work just fine by itself with the username and password, but if you want it on SSO, you're going to have to level up 800x or something nonsensical like that. So really, the way to improve security overall is find a way to raise all boats. And going for the jugular on price point is not going to help us get to that point. So looking for a solution that will find those pieces is definitely something that has to be done. And it has been.
Yeah, the jump from the pro tier to the enterprise tier for a lot of SaaS is, I mean, anytime they don't show you how much it is, like that's a sign. That's
Yes.
like do you even want to find out? Do you even want to call the sales team and find out how much you can't afford it? Yeah.
Or my favorite is I'll type into some LLM or something and say, what is the enterprise pricing for this particular software? And it'll come back with a number that scrolls off the screen, and I'm like, that can't be right. That's got to be hallucination. Then I'll talk to somebody at that company saying, I was just curious about your price point, and like, oh yeah, no, that's actually correct.
Yeah. And also the minimum number of seats always makes me really annoyed. Like there are a lot of enterprise grades that it's like, oh, it's this price. You're like, wow, that's a lot. Like, and a minimum of 10 seats. Like, I don't need 10 seats. What am I supposed to do with those?
Or a minimum of 10,000 seats and you only have 250 people.
Yeah, like it
Yeah,
just
I've seen that.
I don't understand who we're helping.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I've been on the product side as well, and I've seen some of the reasons that the SSO tax exists. Because if you don't want to have to roll your own SAML, if you want to use like one of these other services out there to do SSO for you, um, they charge you like per customer per instance of that SSO. So for each customer you sign on, like there's this multi-$1,000 tax that you're having to pay as the SaaS vendor to somebody else to handle that authentication for you. So a lot of this is kind of rolling downhill. Like it's not, in a lot of cases, I think it's not necessarily the SaaS vendor being a jerk about the pricing here, doing a a grab. It's because they're also being taxed. So
Mhm.
that tax is just getting passed on. So I think this goes all the way to some of the big IDP IAM providers. That are kind of charging crazy rates for some of this. Maybe that's where we fix some of this. But yeah, how does it get fixed, Dave? Do we just have to wait for? Do we just have to keep yelling and linking people to SSO.tax until it changes, or
You
do
know
you
what?
see mass move towards something that makes more sense there?
Quite literally, as the end users, organizations have to vote with their dollars because, they don't have to just accept what is, the standard fare that's being doled out. They can advocate for themselves. I spent 20 years on the other side of the phone as a defender, and there were many times where a vendor would come in and say, "Oh, this will, wash your car. It'll do all these wonderful things for you." And it's like, well, I don't need all of that. I just need it to do this. And they're like, "Oh, we don't do that." And I was like, "All right, well, have a nice day." So we have to look at ways to improve things and finding tools that are actually going to take care of this. And that's one of the parts of, here at 1Password, we're very much about democratization of security. And what I mean by that is, making sure that security is accessible for any organization, any individual, and that, we're approaching it from a zero knowledge perspective so that in the event that, a system is compromised, their data will not be swinging in the breeze. And we've seen it too many times with too many data breaches and both vendors and organizations alike, where their core critical information was leaked onto the internet, and the impact ripples across the world. And so many people can be impacted by this, from identity theft, financial losses, all those sort of things. So by approaching it from a zero knowledge perspective, we're helping to minimize that risk. And it'll never be 100%, but it'll definitely improve matters overall because the attackers will continue to come for you, and that is not going to change anytime soon. So we have to adapt accordingly and make sure that we're having things like extended access management, making sure that we're having passwordless technologies, finding a better way to do things because honestly, just because we've done something for 40 years doesn't mean it was necessarily correct.
What does that mean? You said extended access management. This is I've heard it a few times, but I'm not sure. In my mind, there's a bit of a blank space there. If you could fill that blank space in for me.
Yeah, so yeah, of course. Yeah, extended access management is a category that we're very fortunate to be leading in, and that's not by our own estimation. We've actually seen financial institutions that have given us a nod towards that, saying that we are a leader in that perspective. And what that is providing a solution that will help, either complement SSO or obviate the need for SSO, depending on the organization's mission. Because that's what it is. You want to make sure you're satisfying the outcomes or you're supporting the outcomes of the business to satisfy the aspirations of the business. So what it does is it allows for protecting the organization. So if you don't have things behind SSO, and say somebody creates an account on widget.com, or I hope that's not an actual website, and they create an account using their corporate email address, that could be a potential exposure for the organization. So the software would be able to intercept that and say, this really should be in a corporate password vault. We need to protect that over there. So it's basically, helping the end user to avoid the missteps because we all make them. I've made them. I will happily fall on my sword all day long. Nobody is infallible. And we want to make sure that we're giving them tools written for the end user in a way that's going to be helpful. You don't want to give them tools written by engineers for engineers. It has to be something that makes sense. Because while we have been dealing with security for more years than I care to admit, most people that we're protecting really don't know much about security beyond the fact that they lock their door when they go to work. And that, for a lot of people, is where it stops. The author Malcolm Gladwell really said it well in his book, Talking to Strangers, is that when we're born into this world, we are looking for food, we're looking for shelter. And ostensibly, that is really where our concept of security begins and ends. And as we progress through life into our adult years, we don't think about passwords in a way that security people think about it. We're wired a little bit different. And the average user is like, what do you mean Fluffy Bunny 123 is not a good password? And these are the kind of things where, rather than vilify the users, give them something that's going to work and it's going to be easy for them to adopt. Because if they pick it up, they use it. If their family pick it up, they use it. Guess what? We're reducing the risk overall. And that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, password complexity. I don't recall showing up in Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Oh, it's the new bottom layer. No, yes, yeah, we can do better.
So you're talking about single sign-on there. So again, is this something that when you're integrating with that, is there a way to offer that? Like we've seen SASE services like Caspi's where you can actually enhance the security of a website by kind of sitting in between. By being kind of a man in the middle in that session. Is that something we're talking about here where, maybe
Yes.
we're not waiting for the SaaS provider to, pushing them for certain things, but, trying to enhance and add to that, regardless of whether, they've been thoughtful enough to include SAML or certain security measures that we need.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We are, taking a charge in that respect that, it had to get done. And it's not to, cast aspersions against any other solution. It's just, we had to figure out a way to create a connective tissue that would pull it all together. And this is where like our XAM product and our Enterprise Password Manager and all these tools all fit together, as well as Trellica, in a way that helps pull it all together in a cohesive fashion so that, the end user as the individual or the enterprise both have the same level of security. And we're keeping that uniform in a lot of ways across the board. Obviously, the enterprise and the individual have different requirements, but we want to approach it with that same level of due diligence to make sure that people are getting the same experience, irrespective of what side of the fence they fall on.
I think that's really important because I think security is as much, we talk about this all the time, it's hygiene, right? And it's building better habits. And I think sometimes when you have these very disparate user experiences across different logins and single sign on is kind of a misnomer. It's like grouped sign on in one place, but then there's like everything else outside that. But if you can create a consistent experience, it's easier to create consistent behavior. And that's what's, I think, hard for people outside tech to understand is we've gotten used to just having 900 different UIs to log into 15 different ways with 100 different password managers. But for people who don't do that every day and don't have to tolerate that, what's crazy about people who are not technical is they can get real freaking technical real fast when it comes to trying to find a workaround for something or do something in incognito mode. All of a sudden they're very, very technical. It's interesting because they're Googling like, how do I get around this? Right.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, and the shadow IT takes off.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the news for this episode, we do talk about a case where somebody tricked someone in Zoom and got them to click OK on the dialog box that gave the attacker on the other side of the Zoom session full control over the computer, because you can turn Zoom into like a team viewer or any desk tool basically. And it was somebody who was after stealing some crypto, and when interviewed later, they said, I don't even remember clicking anything, but they had to have granted them control. There was a consent request there.
Was there not a zero touch version of it as well, where the user didn't actually have to click anything? I may have misread that, but I heard something along those lines. That ignore me. That
No,
may not be
No,
correct.
we were talking about setting up an experiment. Adrian and I
yeah.
actually we were like, in the next couple weeks, we're going to try this and figure out like we're going to test some of these exploits that people say are the reason that they got
Mhm.
compromised, because some of them, quite frankly, I'm like, I don't think that works that way.
Jackie was skeptical, so we're gonna do some testing. We're gonna
Okay, so
see.
mental note: I'm not going to accept any Zoom meetings for you for a little while.
Oh, come on.
We need
But
we need test subjects. We'll pay you $5.
$5. Okay, well, that you might have something there.
We'll find an
Stickers,
incentive that
that's
works.
currency.
Oh yeah. But yeah, this is one of those things where we're in a world where things are changing at such a rapid pace, and at the risk of saying that magic word of AI, we're seeing all different iterations of how criminals can change things up. I mean, don't get me wrong, AI in general is absolutely fantastic when used correctly. We've seen some missteps by some organizations that used it as a way to get shed workforce, and at least two of them have come out and said, they fell on their sword and said, look, we made a mistake. Because just because we have AI, it didn't obviate the need for humans. It's just the humans had to be there to do the other jobs. And so I'm glad to see some organizations are waking up to that. And I hope we'll see that pendulum swing the other way as well. Because no matter how much technology we, anthropomorphize or put on a pedestal, it still boils down to the human element. And Jackie, much to what you were talking about there with user behaviors and hygiene and all that, any security program, it boils down to the human element. And if we forget that piece of the puzzle, we're going to fail. And I'm not really in the mood to do that. I've been fighting this game for too long. I don't want to end at the on the wrong side of this.
Yeah, I was
And
listening to a podcast about how to be a better negotiator. It was talking about, when you tell someone to do something, they're very disinclined to do it. Whereas when you tell somebody that they're empowered to make a better decision or empowered to make a choice or they can help in this way, and I think it's one of the difficult things with people who design products and security is that one, we're all neurospicy, and two, we live in
yeah,
this pool of security. And so I don't think we necessarily design things to tell people like, hey, you can help by doing this. It's more like your password must be this long. It's not like, hey, this password length is 8 times more effective than this one. Because then I'd be like, oh, that makes sense. I should make a longer password. And I think there's so much we could do to just message things to people differently to get them more on board with making better decisions.
And I think we're getting to that inflection point because a lot of us are getting up there in years, and like I have two teenagers, or a tween and a teenager, and to the negotiation aspect, oh, that's fun. But
Mhm.
as security practitioners, those are valuable lessons that you can apply to end users as well. As sometimes what works with a teenager at home will have huge, wins when dealing with an organization. And it's just trying to find that right balance of what is going to resonate and get people to actually buy in. I completely agree with that. It's like if you vilify the users, they're going to turtle and run. They're not going to be part of the success of any endeavor that you try to get into.
Yeah. Something I was really successful with when my kids were younger was I had a product that would allow me to dole out internet in time increments, and by default, before they do any chores, the kids would get 30 minutes. So there I'd be drinking my coffee on a Saturday morning, and all of a sudden the kids would just put down their devices and go start doing chores. And it wasn't me telling them to get off their phones and going to do the chores, which made a big difference. It was just, this existential, thing would just make their internet stop working until they did chores. And each of those chores brought with it a certain amount of internet time. Like depending on how hard the chore was or how much work they had to do, they would earn so much time. And that system, like it didn't work forever, but like a certain age range, I think between like age 8 and 13, maybe 6, maybe as low as 6, depends on your kids. That worked really well for me. And so many less arguments, so much less yelling in the house. So where I'm going with this is understanding that human behavior, how people use systems, is so important here, especially for what you guys do, I think.
And to even pull on that thread too, like, I was old school. I would just pull the Ethernet cable out of the router, but I like the more nuanced
I still want to use internet.
Well, what? Sometimes it's good to be disconnected. It's not such a bad thing. But I like what Jackie.
My kids.
I like what you were saying earlier before we started recording about having that app on your phone where you could just disconnect everything.
Yep.
I'm thinking we take it one step further and utilize agentic AI for good, and we create a solution that the agent says, okay, it's this time of day. The kid's internet is off until X, and then it'll make the autonomous decision later saying, well, homework done? Okay, you can have your internet back. So it takes the adults out of the mix in that case, so we can go.
Well, this did. So they literally had an app on their phone where they could say, yeah, I did the chore, and they could submit it. And then I would approve it on mine. So there's a whole approval workflow.
Yeah.
So even when I was out of...
We have something similar, where our kids, they get a little bit of screen time and they have to request more,
So I don't know what's available now, but the physical device I used was called Circle, from Circle Media, and it got acquired by Netgear, I think, and Netgear actually has it built into some of their routers now. And then the app on the phones was called Screen Time. That I used for their tablets and their devices. But the nice thing about the Circle device is it worked for anything on the network because it would use ARP route poisoning to remove their access to the internet. So it could do it for an Xbox, or it could do it for anything that was network connected on the home network. But
my Xfinity has an app that will do it on your phone, where you basically go through and anything connected to your router,
device,
you kind of sort it. You can put bedtime hours and stuff in like that.
Yeah.
But my kids, again, people will get real creative. So I locked down the router. They figured out they could hotspot to their phones. I locked down their phones. They figured out that they could use the open Xfinity hotspot from the neighbor and their MacBooks, and they could connect to iMessage from their MacBook.
Kids are natural hackers.
Yeah. Well,
exactly. Absolutely. And they're always going to look for a way around things. And end users are very much the same way. And when we take that conversation and go from the manual input to the automation, we look at stuff like agentic AI, we're going to see, people building out these apps to do this stuff for them and, take the human out of the mix in a lot of ways. But the concern I have there is that when these projects are being implemented, and I've seen them in many different instances, like if you heard about Echo Leak not too long ago, about a week ago, this was a case where an attacker would send an email and then the agent would read the email. The human saw it as just a normal text email, but there was hidden text that issued instructions, and the agent acted on those instructions and then deleted any evidence that the instructions were ever there. And it's just, these are the kind of things that I really worry about because, while we had the manual intervention with our kids, if we have the automation and we have, agentic AI as an example, where it's making autonomous decisions on your behalf, it might have an entirely different set of logic that evolves over time. And then we take that and pull it out and put it into an enterprise setting. It could get really spicy really quickly, to steal your word there, Jackie.
And we're kind of dancing around another thing here, which is shadow IT, which has really exploded since OpenAI and ChatGPT came on the market. We've seen so many derivative products based on generative AI, and then generative AI just so even there's even a shadow IT within the products we already own, right? Like there's all these add-ons, there's all these modules, there's one day, Crisp AI or Notion, like all my products just had new features all of a sudden. Sometimes these features were enabled by default. Like I was just telling the story, or I think later in this episode, you'll hear me tell the story of Crisp AI suddenly recording all my meetings. Like maybe I clicked OK on something and didn't understand what I was clicking OK on, but I use Crisp AI. I'm using it right now just to clean up any background noises, if I'm typing on the keyboard, that kind of thing. Like that's what I pay money on it for. But one day they decided to add the feature of recording conversations. So all of a sudden I go to look in Crisp AI. In the last 6 months, every conversation was recorded and transcribed, and some of those were very
Zoom did that too, like 2 years
yeah.
ago. When Zoom rolled out AI Companion for Zoom, they rolled it out automatically enabled for enterprises by default. And somebody sent this panicked message out in Slack and was like, hey, I just saw this thing is on. And I went in as sure as
Yeah.
hell. I was like, delete, 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 delete.
Yeah,
delete.
same. I was like, these people would be pissed if they knew I recorded that, because I promised I didn't know it was happening. And it does it in such a way where you don't see it as a participant in the Zoom call, because Crisp AI is man in the middle with your audio interfaces.
Yeah.
And that's my real fear with all of this technology. Like, the technology in of itself is fantastic in the options that it presents to us that we can use, but it's the implementation. And that's where I really get concerned about. I mean, we look back to the advent of the internet. That's my favorite one to point to, because it was point A, point B. That was all. Security was never factored in. Like, I was very fortunate that Scott Bradner was one of my professors when I was doing my postgrad work. And I asked him that question. I said, was security ever part of the equation? He said, no, not at all, not even remotely. And then as we see each new, whatever the flavor of the year is, pop up, security almost always seems to be running to catch up. And it's not so much a maturity issue from a security perspective these days as it is the technology sometimes gets so far ahead of us, because we are, outmatched in a lot of ways with the sheer size and will of technology companies trying to push these things, that we have to make sure that security is factored in. And this is why we have to have more of these conversations and make sure that, yes, the technology is fantastic, but don't enable things by default. Like, if you do that in places like Europe, for example, where I am right now, GDPR will pop up, if you're recording conversations that aren't supposed to be recorded. That's just one of so many examples.
Well, I think, with things like Cursor, right? If you tell Cursor, like, if I'm in marketing and I'm like, hey, Cursor, I want to like build a form people can fill out that, collects this kind of data, and it's internal, it's for employees, right? And it just has a piece in it that spins up an RDS. Like, how are you supposed to know that? Nobody's going to, and this is the thing that just is insane to me, is that it's so easy to deploy things in the cloud, but it's so easy to deploy things in the cloud. And I think we're getting to the point where if you aren't extremely sure what permissions people have in your cloud environment, this very quickly gets really out of hand. And if you accidentally delete that database because you realize somebody spun up something they weren't supposed to, but it had data in it that you're required to retain, now you have a legal nightmare. I don't know. The whole thing is just, it's moving so fast that I don't think that anybody can keep up with it.
And further to that, too, is how are you going to manage the credentials that the AI agents are using? So if you're doing something on AWS Bedrock and somebody's able to purloin those credentials, how do you revoke them? How do you even know that they've been compromised? Because suddenly you have an attacker that has the potential to masquerade as an agent. And those credentials, by and large, will have more privilege than the individual.
I actually give a talk. I've only given it once. I would love to give it more on the concept of cyber scouts. That was the term I came up with. But I think we need folks in cybersecurity who are, and I'm naturally this person, that's part of where it comes from, always trying out the new stuff, and discovering where those kinds of edges are, where these extra credentials might be, how they could be abused, understanding that before all the folks on your dev side, on the IT side, have already deployed all this stuff. You're running to catch up.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually a concept called the 10th person principle, where if you have 9 people that say that everything is secure, our systems are great, the job of the 10th person is literally say, no, it isn't, and here's why, and then document it all, so that you don't have that institutional blindness saying everything is fine, and you miss the rather significant problems that could be percolating under the surface.
I think this is a great task for students. Like, I think community colleges need to start putting one of these programs in place, because we don't have a skills shortage. We have a skills gap. To our point, teenagers are really freaking good at circumventing things, and they also make great content. And so, like, if you want to find out how secure your product is, give it to a 21-year-old and tell them they can't do something to it, and then give them a week.
I love it. I love it. Dave, any final thoughts before we wrap here?
Just it is like, because we are in a rather fast pace at this point from a security perspective, we have to really take a moment's pause to look at when, for example, when a news story breaks about some sort of security incident or it's a new technology, we have to take that moment to pause. And that's not a bad thing. It is, you're taking that moment to say, is this something that is important to my organization or to the security community at large, or is this fluff? And you want to make sure you're disseminating the proper information and looking at the best way to secure your environment. And right now we have things like agentic AI. They're way out in front, all kinds of systems being deployed. We really got to go out there and, Jackie, to your point, we really got to set loose the teenagers and let them tear it apart.
I love it. Dave, thank you so much for joining us today on Enterprise Security Weekly.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Make sure you visit securityweekly.com/1password to learn more. And stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk about whether AI is really coming for my job, your job, all the jobs, and how worried we should be. Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits is stopped before it can even begin. ThreatLocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control and every executable in your environment, ThreatLocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps. Just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how ThreatLocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step towards total peace of mind by visiting securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker today. All right, welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Today's topic segment is on AI and whether it's going to replace us or not. When people talk about AI replacing people, it's interesting. What actually triggered this was I saw Daniel Miessler and Jackie, help me out. Where are my notes? Marcus Hutchins. Yeah, I know you're friends with Marcus. So they have, it's 2 hours for what is labeled part one of them going back and forth and debating. Daniel Miessler's kind of pivoted into all AI all the time with his newsletter. He still touches on cybersecurity stuff somewhat, but he's really dove deep in that. He's built stuff. He's got a GitHub where you can use some of the stuff he's built with LangChain and other tools like that. I think it's called Fabric is one of the tools he created to kind of consume content. And, because there's more content out there than he ever has time to read. That was kind of the first thing he built around AI was something to just summarize everything and deliver it to him in such a way that he could consume more stuff and understand everything that's going on. And it's interesting. So I've almost listened to all of it. I listened to more than an hour of it. Let me see where I am. I'm an hour and 6 minutes into it. And I noticed a couple things about it that I wanted to discuss here. And I want to get your input also. It occurs to me I did not introduce you guys because we do that in the first interview segment. Interesting. Should I have introduced you guys first? So if you're listening to this, you'll hear that intro. But not everybody that's here right now will be there when I do that intro. I'm going to have to figure that out. When we do pre-records, things get complicated.
I guess you can do, if you're just joining us and then do like mini intros.
Yeah.
If you're just if you're just joining us,
you're just tuning in.
Jackie McGuire is with us, Eamon Elsawa, and Katie. How you doing, Katie?
Oh, well, how are you?
Doing good. And Eamon, how are you doing? Where are you today?
I'm good. I'm in New York, so I'm remotely caffeinated today. Yeah.
Remotely caffeinated. That sounds like not much, like you haven't had much caffeine.
You're locally caffeinated in a remote location. I think
there
that's
you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is one of my favorite coffee shops is here, so I'm so excited about it.
Are you going to promote it just
Nice.
because you like them?
Yeah, what is it?
There's
share?
two. One is called La Cabra. They have, every time I go there, like the experience, the coffee there is just phenomenal. And there's a local little shop here called Neighborhood that I like. Just kind of, it's just a cute little shop with a bench outside. So it's pretty cool.
Which borough are you in?
I'm in Soho. So
Okay,
yeah, like lower
cool.
Manhattan.
And Jackie, you're not outside.
I'm not. No, I'm actually squatting at my husband's desk today because I was too lazy to put my office back together. When we rearranged our house to put a music studio downstairs, most of that music studio came out of my office, and I was doing that thing I do where I was super focused on doing downstairs. And then this morning I went into my office upstairs and I was like,
oh yeah, that's
did
right.
this? What kind of monster would do this in my office?
I've been there. Yep. I'm good at sabotaging myself as well.
Yeah, I do. I so many times I stumble up to bed at like 10 o'clock at night, and there's all the laundry that I got 80% of the way through, but never actually.
Yep.
I'm like,
same.
Oh, past Jackie.
Such a jerk to yourself.
I know.
All right, so today, I want to dive into this, and just to kick it off, like my thought here, after listening to them for more than an hour, they're not really talking about whether or not AI can do jobs. This occurred to me while listening to them. They're talking about whether AI can or can't do specific tasks that are things that you would do within a job. Because I think, and I got some of this perspective because I tried to automate some basic things using a mix of AI and traditional techniques, using tools like Zapier and N8N, and there's a bunch of like orchestration automation tools that you can connect to your Gmail and Google Drive and all kinds of different tools. And very quickly I found, like, one of these automations, I needed to pull some information out of Instagram. Well, the information in Instagram from the bar is in there as a photo, So first of all, there's no API to pull it out of Instagram, and then I would have to OCR all of a sudden it gets super complex, right? You start running into stuff where there's no API, so you need computer vision, which some of these AI companies are building and working on. I think both OpenAI and Anthropic have some kind of thing that knows where to click with the mouse and enter text, and it uses a computer like a human does. But yet there's just a lot of, I feel like we haven't done the work of, okay, like 60% of my job, I'm in meetings. How does an AI replace me? Like, are those meetings useful, or, is AI actually doing us a favor and maybe we don't need all those meetings? But there's a lot of communication that goes on. Like, is it going to use my email? I often hear from programmers that writing code is only 10% of what they do. And every time we have this conversation about, is AI going to replace us? We end up talking about that 10%. We end up talking about tasks within a job and not the full job, I feel like. So who wants to go first? That's just to kind of kick off the discussion there.
So what did they say in the talk? Did they say, is it more of a debate, or did they say it well, or was it like, no, was there no judgment yet?
It is a debate. And the principal debate is over whether or not AI will get good enough to replace a large amount of people, right? Like Daniel Miessler's on the side of, it's going to replace millions of jobs. There's not every job out there, but there are tons of jobs out there ripe for replacement. And then Marcus is on the side where he's saying, no, it's already plateaued. And it's not consistent enough or good enough to be trusted with doing a lot of this stuff. So that they end up kind of arguing. They do get into some examples of where, okay, like non-deterministic output is fine if you're writing a report. Like, I don't care if you use the same number of bullet points every time, right? Or if you use bullet points at all, or go with more of a paragraph narrative structure with the thing. But then, of course, there's tasks where, if the output of the AI is going into an API that has restricted fields and field type and it's got to be a number, it can't have letters in it or something like that, or it can't have a $ in there. You do need deterministic output, right?
I think so. For me, I always go back to, if you look at economies of scale, where the ability to automate things would have substantially impacted profits in the bottom line, for example, clothing manufacturing, right, in China. Have they automated a lot of things? Absolutely. Are there things that you still need massive numbers of humans to do because a robot simply can't handle the tactile,
Mm-hmm.
instant adaptation it takes to sew fabric? Like, there are some fabrics that robots
Yeah.
just can't sew, right? And so there, I think there's a
Or,
couple
or they
things.
can, but that's like an $8 million robot, right?
Right. It's an $8 million robot, and then the cost of it getting jammed or something going wrong.
Yeah.
I hate to say this, but humans are also self-healing and fairly disposable. A human cuts themselves with scissors and you send them home, their skin heals in a couple days, right? A robot cuts themselves with
You don't send them
scissors.
home. They put duct tape on it. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
well, no, yeah, yeah. We're assuming fair labor practices because I'm in a good mood this week. So, I think so. There's a couple things, right? One of the things that I found interesting as I got older is that I realized when we say common sense, common doesn't mean universally common. It means common amongst generally cultures and groups of people. And so there are things that we think are objective that are in fact quite subjective. And to your question about, I sit in meetings 60% of the day, what's an AI going to do? Well, honestly, some people might like me better if my AI had already debriefed me at the beginning of the day on my opinions on the meeting it was going
Yeah.
into, and it was having it out with other AIs rather than me having to yell at somebody I work with. That would probably be great, because then the
Yeah.
AI would probably be more rational than I would. But yeah, I'm on this. I think it depends on what you mean by replace. So as I'm using AI tools, when we say replace jobs, did digital cameras replace the film studios that are inside Walmarts? Absolutely. Did it replace the film development studios that were inside every pharmacy and grocery store? Absolutely. But those jobs went somewhere, right? Which is that, okay, now you have this whole way to create this new digital medium. And so those people move on. And I think there's an evolution of the job cycle where, yes, some specific jobs go away and the labor pool gets reallocated elsewhere as technology removes barriers between creativity and output. But I was just having
Mhm.
this conversation with a friend the other day. It will never change taste. And taste is the difference between like
Yeah.
3 and 4 sigmas from the mean, right? Between the third and fourth standard deviation. And so having taste, and taste is not something, again, that's universal. It's shared with groups of people. And for me, removing the barrier for me between my idea for a really funny sitcom and my ability to produce that in animated form, does that replace a bunch of people's jobs? Sure, but it's my taste that would have made that thing happen, right? So I don't know. So I'm kind of with Marcus that AI is never going to replace taste.
Yeah, and that's how you get hired too, right? Is that you can anybody can push buttons in Photoshop or something like that, but it's your experience, your sense of style, that taste, that stuff. That's just kind of the combination of all the experience that you've had.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I,
understanding the difference between where unexpected is going to be delightful and where it's going to be jarring, and how to walk that line, I think is a very human thing that requires empathy.
So I feel like Katie's probably seen some jobs replaced by AI at this point. So let's come to you next, Katie.
I agree with everything Jackie said, actually. And this is not the first time we've done this, right? Like, there have been many industrial revolutions. There have been many inventions that have replaced certain jobs. Like, how many blacksmiths do you know?
Yeah.
How many?
How many people are carrying memos around within the inside of the company, right?
Right, right. Or I mean, we could go on and on about how many horse and buggy chauffeurs. I don't actually know what they're called. They used to be called, right? Because we don't really have them except in Central Park. Eamon, for instance, could
Yeah.
go and get transported today in a horse and buggy. I could not where I live.
Yeah.
And, so there are a lot of jobs that have disappeared and have been replaced by lots of other things. And I agree that there are certain things, certain tasks that can be replaced, that can be automated. And it will be up to individuals and businesses as to how much they want to accept and how much they do not want to accept. One thing I would add on top of what Jackie said is that it's also about being a human, right? So, like during COVID, there were a lot of things we could not do. And for me, I was already working remotely, as probably were most of you, not just co-hosting this, but listening to the call, right? Like our industry is very heavy remote work and was well before COVID. So the biggest impact on my personal life was the gym. I couldn't go to the gym, or I could only go to the gym because my gym had a policy where 2 people were allowed in the gym at the same time on whatever their own times were, as long as they were on the opposite side of the gym. Privately owned gym, long story short. But it was really kind of odd, right? But most gyms didn't exist. So tons and tons and tons of people started doing things like, they're basically digital workouts. They got the mirror and they got, what are those bikes? The bikes with the programs in them. What the heck? They had the
Peloton?
Tone.
Yes, Peloton. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Complete brain bubble there. Tons of people bought those types of things because not only were we home and needed stuff to do, but we couldn't go out and people were, they needed to exercise and get some of the stress out. A lot of gym owners and a lot of the fitness industry was flipping out. Oh my God, this is going to replace gyms. I'm not going to have a job. Guess what? As soon as COVID ended, people started migrating back because, to my point about 30 minutes ago, because I'm verbose, we're people. And we're still human, and humans still like human interaction for the most part. And there is something about a human experience and working with other people, even if it's remotely. I'm on with you guys. I haven't seen you or talked to you in a few months, right? Because our schedules have been weird, but there's something very human about being able to connect with your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers. And that is not going to be replaced because people are still going to want human experiences. So the essence of jobs may change. The tasks you can do might change. Geez, my job has changed a ton. All my deep research, hello, Gemini, saves me days at a time, sometimes weeks. Do I use it to, check over my work before I submit it? Absolutely. Do I trust it fully? I do not. Have I seen people who have written content with AI? Yep. Can I spot it in an instant? Yep. Does it have any personality? Nope.
Yeah. Does it need to, though?
Well,
that's where I want to go next.
Will some people care? No. Will others care? Absolutely. So I think there's a scale, and I think it's going to depend on who you are, what your industry is, and what you're interested in. Some jobs will be absolutely replaced. People cannot be replaced, though, because there will still be that human need and that human interaction. Just my opinion.
So, did Jerry Springer replace 60 Minutes? No. And I think that's the that's crazy. That's
actually a good comparison. I think
it is.
I like this comparison.
There's a difference between like doom scrolling on Instagram and TikTok and like distraction content for the masses. And you know what? If a bunch of that crap can come from AI, great, right? And that's like, I think it depends on what you're looking for and who your audience is. And when you say, AI can do this better than the average person, well, the average American has a freaking 6th grade reading level. Whoop-de-do. They're not the people who are out there writing, 4,000 word articles for the New York Times. That's just not. And so are we talking about, do you want somebody who can write paparazzi articles for a tabloid? Yeah. Sure. AI can do that for sure. Because the people consuming that are what we in my family refer to as the middle of the bell curve. And AI is for the middle of the bell curve because it was trained on the middle of the bell curve. Because that's what the internet is.
And there's also the issue, and if you haven't seen it, I mean, maybe it's targeting me specifically, but all of the the
Could
new
be.
research that's out about how people who write with AI, their brain functionality.
Yeah, the MIT.
Okay,
Yeah.
if we're going to talk, so that study was grossly misinterpreted. So what they were saying is the EEG during the time showed less creative function. So yes, when you are writing with AI, your brain is going to be less creative because the AI is doing the creative. This wasn't talking about long-term impacts. And then the other thing it was saying was that you're less
It doesn't
likely
make you
to-
dumber.
It doesn't make your brain functionally impaired, which is how a lot of people interpreted that result. And then the other thing was that you were like only like 30% as likely to remember the topics that you had generated if you use generative AI than if you had written it yourself. So I just want to make sure we're really clear, because I was all over LinkedIn telling people like, this is not what this says. But over time, we don't know. And that's the problem.
I promise I won't take us on a tangent, but I would argue that repetitive use of not using your brain is just as bad as repetitive not using your body to build muscle.
Well, I mean,
Sure.
the same goes for GPS, right?
And Google.
Well, it depends on if you're
Google
doing
and
that
everything.
everywhere, though.
But one thing. So, I think we're talking about like, I think the discussion. I think what a lot of people are debating about AI. It's funny because just in the past couple of weeks, I hear people saying, "Oh, the AI apocalypse and whatever." And like even I saw some YouTuber like training his son to be a pilot because at least that job is not going to go away with AI. So far. So,
planes are already flown by
I've got bad news.
Well, I digress. I mean, however, just this past week, I had someone, and this is going to be like, okay, I had someone come to me and say he went down a AI rabbit hole, and he put AI against like as if it was like a DevOps person, connected AI to the source code, connected AI to all the infrastructure, AWS, and all the tooling and GitHub and everything. And when there was an issue, had AI go and try to troubleshoot the issue. And the AI went and did a test and went on the website and because now AI can do browser automation and whatever. Anyway, long story short, it took 4 minutes for it to find the issue and resolve it, make a pull request to resolve it and complete it. Where an engineer would have taken that person probably 30 minutes. I mean, maybe less, right? With intuition, they would know where to check. But which is what AI doesn't have. AI doesn't have intuition, but it does have memory. Whereas if this happened before, over time, we'll build it. And then he took that same AI. Sorry, one second. And he took the AI and like tried it against pen testing. And it's still a work in progress, but people are doing this with bug bounties right now, where it has access to source code and access to the web interface and iterates and tries to test and not only finds an issue, but also remediates it. And one of the big issues with pen testing is that it's time boxed, right? Like that's the really big downside with pen testing. But here you have an AI agent that won't sleep, and your attackers don't sleep either. But I don't know. I think it's poised to replace a lot of tasks. It won't fully replace people, but look at like taxis, anyway.
So I want to throw out a thought here, Eamon, and see what you think. Because I've seen a lot of this where, people are like, oh, AI can do this. I tried it once, right? And it succeeded in doing that. But I wonder if once we get to scale, if we actually find it does the task correctly 60% of the time, or maybe 90% of the time. Like, what do we do about that percentage where it gets it wrong? Who manages that? What threshold is acceptable there? Because again, it's that's something I've run into because I use AI in a lot of tasks, and it still does get it very wrong, like a certain percentage of time. So now I'm wondering, okay, like if the manager's employees go away and replace with AI, that manager, that role completely changes, right? Not now you have to manage a bunch of bots, and you have to know how to do that all the work of your subordinates because you have to fix it when it gets it wrong.
I think that's what I'm trying to get to, is that the summary is that it's going to replace L1 tasks, level 1 tasks. And it's already replacing it. Like, you still need a person right now, you'll still need a person for the most part to manage. But basically, this person would have to be tooled up or, understand how to use AI, right? Like take Waymo, for example, right? People complain, first of all, people complained when Uber came out that it replaced jobs for taxi drivers. But then Waymo came out, and now Waymo, people are complaining, but Waymo can't
How's
take
that
me.
taste?
Yeah, right. But Waymo can't take me across the bay, or it can't take me to far places. But I
Not
went
even to
into
the
Waymo.
airport.
Oh, there you go. Right. Not yet. And you need infrastructure in place to do it. But like, I think where you need to answer your question, people are gonna have to be skilled in using AI, and it's gonna take care of L1 stuff. I use it for myself, like coming up with a new landing page. What I did is I'm using a project. I fed this project all this information, all my resources and whatever. I told it what I'm trying to do. And every question I answer is based on that project. And it's so significantly faster. I'm like, come up with a landing page for this. Boom. It literally made it, and it customized it to my tool and had like the nice whatever. And that's where like maybe someone I would have asked on Upwork or something to maybe ask an Uber person to do it. But anyway, that's what I'm trying to say.
I just don't. I don't think it replaces jobs as much as it changes the baseline expectation. So there's always going to be an L1 because there's always a first line of employees. And now, to your point, that L1 is not the person who gathers all the logs. It's the person who manages all the agents gathering logs, and that person's not a manager anymore. And so, is it going to bump a whole bunch of expectations up where a bunch of people are going to have to upskill to keep the same level job they're at and, stay in L1? Yeah, absolutely. I just don't think those jobs go away because I also don't think we're looking at the support jobs necessary to make those jobs work. Because Adrian, to your point, who does that person call when they can't make the agents work? Because there are going to need to be a hell of a lot more of those support people than we think there are. And there is going to have to be a human at the very end of the line because people will lose their absolute crap if they're paying 6, 7, 8 figures for things and they get stuck in a support loop.
But the jobs will go away. I mean, some jobs will go away. The L1 will go away. And now you have to have an L1.5 or L2 and an AI engineer, like mechanic, right, to maintain the agents. So like toll booths, right? There's no toll booth agents here in the Bay Area because they got replaced with tags.
Yeah, I did, but don't you think the job description just kind of I don't think it's going to be like boom overnight that job is replaced. It's more like when you put a sim in, right?
I think like some of them are.
This person looks at these logs to, hey, this person looks at these logs, and you also need to know this sim. And over time, things gradually kind of migrate to the platform. I don't know. Maybe I'm optimistic.
So when I worked, I think examples really help here. And when I worked in marketing, we almost always had contractors to do things like graphic design. Like maybe we needed an image for a blog post, or we needed somebody to write some SEO content that we put on the website just to improve the website's SEO. And so Katie, like there's all these things where we don't really care about the quality of it, but it has to be done. It has to be there. And none of those are really full-time jobs anyway, and you could almost place these under, I urge everybody listening to this to go read the book, Bullshit Jobs. But yeah, I feel like those went away almost overnight once the image generation got pretty good. You know what? I'm not going to have a graphic designer, create something just for an article or a blog post anymore. I'll just use the machine to do that, or same thing for some of these SEO posts.
Absolutely, and that's a super salient point. And frankly, I who write for a living use AI for some of that super low level stuff, like this SEO blog. Like, first of all, I never could stand it. I hate the premise of it. I think it's kind of silly and ridiculous, and it doesn't work like it worked 10, 15 years ago. But yeah, I put in my keywords, I give it my topic. I don't really care about quality because nobody's reading it. That's not the point, right? I will argue that images still suck because I can never create a good image. Doesn't matter what inputs I have.
I think that's prompt engineering there. The images have gotten way better. Like with the latest OpenAI, like I've been using them for my slides, but I went to prompt base and I bought a bunch of prompts to learn how to write better image prompts.
Well, I was going to say when Eamon was talking that your use case for creating a landing page, perfect for AI. But what I heard you saying is the work you had to put into it to do it. Yes, the work you put into it was significantly less than building the landing page manually, writing the text yourself, editing the text yourself. Get it. But I also heard you saying that you were putting significant thought and effort into what you wanted before you asked AI to build you a landing page. That is critically important because the whole garbage in, garbage out thing still matters.
But I only had to do it once. So I only did it once to set up the project, and then that's it.
Well, yes, but you put thought and time and effort, and you thought about, what do I want? What do I envision? Yeah. What's the feeling I want? How do I want it to read? How do I want people to feel when they are reading it? You didn't just go, build me a landing page on Enterprise Security Weekly, because that, I believe, is what the vast majority of people are going to do with AI. And there is the massive difference. I don't believe you just said, oh, build me a landing page. I think you even if you weren't sitting at your desk doing it, I think I know you well enough that you had been thinking about it. And then when you sat down at your desk to put it in, whether it was 10 minutes or 120 minutes, whatever it was, you had already put significant thought and creativity into what you envisioned the end result. And then you downloaded it again. It could have only been 20 minutes. And then you got what you needed because the human brain that you had gave the AI what it needed to do its job. It saved you tons of time. You didn't need to pay somebody to do that. Great for tasks like that. But you can't outsource what your vision is. You can't outsource what your feeling is. You can't outsource what the end user's feeling is going to be. That's not going to change. At least not, I don't think, in my lifetime, because the sentience isn't there. It's just not. And
it's not going to replace all jobs, but I think there is an argument that's going to replace many jobs.
Sure. And I'm grateful that I can do things faster. I can spit out a 1,500 word SEO blog post in 20 minutes by putting in the right prompts.
I think the vast majority of jobs it's going to replace, people aren't going to miss all that much. Like, I don't know anybody who's like, lighting the oil lamps. Like, that was just my mission in life. My passion was lamplighter, right? Electricity.
I once got yelled at in a church in Italy in Italian, incendere, or whatever it was, because the priest wanted me to go light all of his candles. And I'm like, what do you, I'm just looking at the pretty church here, folks. But yes, so I didn't want to do that job either.
That's hilarious. Well, to wrap this up, I think it sounds like, the jury's still kind of out. Like, I think people should go and try to replace themselves with AI and see how far they get before they're like, I think you have to try and build the automations to realize what a human still needs to do and where, the idea of doing that kind of, I think it can replace tasks. I'm just going to come back to that and say, like, it can clearly replace tasks. But it's not clear to me that it can replace entire jobs at this point, unless those are kind of bullshitty jobs, which, again, go read the book Bullshit Jobs. They really do exist. And, like tier 1 SOC, just triaging alerts. Should that have ever been a job in the first place? I'm not sure it should have. So those kinds of jobs, I think we will see, Eamon, to your point, getting replaced, where it's just there's not a whole lot of that critical thinking going on. You're not having to direct a thing. It's just very rote, repetitive type work.
I think hopefully this will push a lot of data standardization that's been extremely hard to demonstrate value for, because without that, you can't really use it. But
that's a good point.
But
That's a
I
good
would
point.
say that if you want to wait until the industry dukes it out and figures out what the applicable use cases that aren't bullshit are, go learn calculus and trig. Like, for God's sakes, I didn't learn it until I was 30. I wish I had taken calculus significantly earlier. The end of the day, that's all this stuff is calculus and trig. And when it all implodes, they'll need somebody to rebuild it from calculus and trig. So if you're looking for what should I tell my kids to do right now, it's learn some freaking math, because at the end of the day, this is all Python and math.
Mm.
And I think also to help you upskill yourself, if you are an L1 or if you are like, you feel yourself like an unskilled, learn AI and learn how, like say you're a SOC 1, a tier L1 SOC analyst, right? Incorporate AI into your job and that'll naturally upskill yourself so you can work on the really cool stuff, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
automate the boring stuff.
I was kind of afraid of it because, I'm a dinosaur. And I was like, oh, crap, this is the first job it's going to take. Anybody can write product documentation. Anybody can translate technical documents. And surely anybody can do creative writing. But I just got to write a really cool research paper because I don't have to write SEO blog posts. I don't write landing
It freed
pages.
you up for,
I don't
wash my dishes so I can do my art, right?
Yeah, I got to write a really cool, and I learned so much about EU regulations that I really wouldn't have had time to dig into. I would have forgotten it 5 minutes after I had written it. So yeah, it can be a huge efficiency tool. And now I got to learn something awesome, and I'm old, so if I can do it.
Do the garbage work so I can do the fun stuff. Absolutely. Yeah, the rewarding stuff. All right, well, that's it for today's topic segment. Stick around. We're going to do the news next, and probably be a little bit shorter because this one was longer, but I think it was totally worth it. This episode is sponsored by Fastly, the application security leader and edge cloud platform behind many top digital experiences. Fastly helps organizations deliver and secure online experiences for their end users through a modern, developer-friendly approach to security. With their next-gen WAF, bot management, and DDoS protections, teams have the tools they need to ensure their applications and APIs perform at their best without sacrificing speed or reliability. Discover how Fastly transforms security into an enabler for digital innovation at securityweekly.com/Fastly. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW413 if you want to follow along as we go through the news or for links to the articles that we're discussing. All righty. So there is a bunch of funding, but I just kind of skipped a lot of it because a lot of it was like seed stage. It was like a external attack surface management company, but in some, other market where I don't think people be that interested in it. Didn't see a lot of interesting stuff, but Fleet, I think, is an interesting company because everyone seems to hate device management. Because you end up using like 3 different products, like one for mobile products, one for Macs, one for Windows. You've got Intune, Jamf, or Kanji, and then maybe a third or a fourth. And it's a constant, like in Slack groups with security leaders. I see it at least once every 6 months. People are like, okay, I'm at a new place now. What's everybody using for MDM? Or for EMM? Does everything still suck here? And Fleet looks like it could kind of break that curse. They were originally built off of OS Query, I think, and they do cover all the platforms now. But I know people who are really excited about them, but I haven't really jumped into where they are today. But it does have a free tier, which I like as well. It allows you to jump into it, play around with it. But and they're going a lot deeper than I think some of the other ones too. Like you can go very deep, setting policies and things like that with it. Where some of them are more focused on just managing software and the hosts, and configuration on the host, and they kind of stop there.
Yeah,
I still have
device
not found a
management.
good one for personal use at this point. We had talked about a couple of them at Identiverse, but I would rather pay for one for myself, to be honest with you. So maybe I'll just set up my own little enterprise.
I've literally thought about that. Seriously.
It'd be like all over North.
This one's $7 a host per month. But there's, I would have to go down the list to see if I could get away with the free one or if I would want the premium one.
Yeah, I usually want the one I pay for so that they don't get my data and I get to sue them if something goes really wrong. Like,
yeah, different terms of service, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like I always assume if I'm not paying for something, I'm the product.
Yeah, or you're helping to build the product. Like I've noticed in security, when you are the product in a lot of cases with free stuff, you are free threat intelligence. You're producing threat intelligence for them. All right. All right. Yeah. So they raised a $27 million Series B. They've been on my list to check out for a while. I really need to play around with the product. Because I could use something like that on some of my systems. I used to use Cisco Meraki a while ago. They had a free tier, but then they just stopped. It seemed like they just stopped updating it. And the UI is like 20 years old now. I haven't used it in a while. Maybe they've updated it since, but I still get monthly emails from them about my devices and stuff, but I don't think I have it installed on anything anymore. But
I keep hoping Sophos will come out with some version of there, because they have the Home Protect for Sophos for like your MacBook and PC, and I keep hoping they'll come out with one for mobile devices. Hi Joe, that would be great.
Yeah, you got to check back every now and then. Sometimes that stuff comes out and I just completely miss the announcement, and like it'll come up and I'm like, well, when did they do that? And before the pandemic. I didn't know. So
I assume that if people are doing something, you'll let me know about it, because nobody uses more shit than you do as far as people I know. So
this is true. I have problems. my password database is groaning under the weight of all the logins.
Sorry, Eamon, I interrupted.
I know. Just saying, device management is a pain and has been a pain, and for some reason continues to be a pain. So I don't know when it's going to be less painful in the future. I think because it hinges on the end manufacturers and what they allow the companies to do and how, the entry and all that kind of stuff. It would be nice if they just played nice or like made their own.
So we got a couple acquisitions here. Securonics acquires Threat Quotient, which I had even forgotten what Threat Quotient did, but at some event a bajillion years ago, like this little Rhino, Threat Quotient Rhino, must be 12 years old at least. It's been sitting on my desk. And it's just a little squishy Rhino that's very cute. That makes me happy when I look at it. But yeah, they raised about $90 million and got acquired by Securonics. I don't know by how much, because Securonics, I think, is still private at this point. Securonics' last round was $1 billion. So surely some of that, even though that was a couple of years ago, that was some of the war chest that maybe they're doing acquisitions with. Apologies here. I don't know a ton about, obviously from the name, they do threat intelligence. I don't know a whole lot more than that, but yeah, the acquisition makes sense from that perspective, I guess. Yeah. SIMs can use threat intelligence always.
I assume it's like threat quantification or something like that, but I know about the next one. I've written a few different articles on this one.
Yeah, Celebrate. Very contentious company. Obviously, their product is used by large governments, assassins. I don't know who else, but anybody who has a need to hack into somebody's iPhone, whether they're still using it or you've somehow physically obtained it. Celebrite has had tools for a while now for pulling information off of phones, breaking into phones. I think famously they're the one back when Apple refused to build a back door for that one terror case. They're the ones that finally unlocked that phone. And it makes sense, I guess, for them to acquire a platform that makes finding exploits easier, which is what, so Corellium virtualizes, I believe, iOS, and fought a lot of lawsuits against Apple to be able to do that. I feel like 170 million is not a lot. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if that's what their legal costs were in some of these fights with Apple alone.
Or if somebody threw out that number of one really good 0 day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just a single 0 day on iOS is over $1 million. So 170 million is not a lot for a platform where you can find a whole bunch. Right.
Well, and this is this company, the market penetration that they have amongst police, intelligence, you name it. This, when you watch the cop shows and they take the phone and they just put it down on the little pad and it's just doing this thing. Yeah, that so yeah. Yes, I could see one really good 0 day for Apple device. Actually, probably more for Android devices, because that is the most commonly used international device, right? So Apple has decent penetration, but when you get into some of the more sketchy areas of the globe, it's significantly more Android heavy. But yeah, I have strong feelings about this company.
Yeah. All right. We've got a couple. So I want to jump to the ChatGPT one, having a meeting recorder. This is only for the Mac app. So in case you weren't aware, OpenAI has built applications. I still just use it in a web browser, but you can install a Windows or a Mac app, and it'll sit down there and you can pop it up with a hotkey, and I guess you can get to it more quickly. Browser tab is fine for me, so I've got a pinned browser tab for when I use ChatGPT. But the one on the Mac now integrates with your audio input and output devices to record meetings. And Crisp AI also does this, and Notion also does this as well. And there's probably a ton of other ones. And the reason it's notable and making people nervous is you have no way of knowing if the other person you're on a meeting with is using something like this, because it's just doing it locally. It's connecting to those. It doesn't show up as an attendee in your Zoom meeting or anything like that. Obviously, because it's just hooking into input output. It would work for Riverside, which is what we're using now. It would work for anything that has audio input and output, because it's just hooking those input output streams directly. Or in the case of Crisp AI, it replaces your input output, because the main purpose, at least for me, for Crisp AI is cleaning up your audio. So that's why Crisp AI is in line. So you use the Crisp AI microphone and speaker in whatever application you're recording in. So people just need to know that this is common. You can turn it off if you have one of the enterprise, like Team Enterprise or the educational workspaces, any version of ChatGPT where you're managing like multiple employees, where you have like an admin console. They do have an option where you can turn this off for everybody. So that's good.
I feel like this is headed for some legal battles.
Oh, I was just going to say, in case anybody was wondering, the states in which this is not legal. So states fall into one of two categories: one-party consent, which means you can record whatever the hell you want if you consent to it and you're part of the conversation, or two-party consent, which means both people need to consent. So California, Connecticut, Florida, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, Montana, New Hampshire, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Washington are all two-party consent states, which means that it would be illegal to use this tool without notifying somebody of it, just for what it's worth.
And how awkward is that? Like you jump on a call with somebody, hey, just no reason. Where are you where are you joining from? You know, like
where do you happen to? You asked Eamon at the beginning of this call, Adrian.
It's true.
We're recording this.
And there's a big
He's already
banner that
consented.
says this call is being recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I guess then I'm not going to get into what quantifies consent on this episode, but yeah, it's interesting. You know what? Like for example, I usually have my Meta glasses on. Right, there's a little tiny flashing light up here. Is that consent? If a reasonable person
I don't think
could
so.
see the light, me neither.
If you're in the public, you don't have to even ask permission.
Is the internet considered the public?
No. If you're in a public space, taking a picture.
Yeah.
From the public,
and that has precedent. Yeah.
Total tangent. Since I am the tangent queen, how many of you sit there and wonder how many random pictures you're in by strangers?
I hate that.
I photobomb people on purpose.
Do you think about it like, wow, I wonder if it's like 100 or 1 million? I do.
So one of our trivia team members has gotten into photography, and nobody's really said anything, but he's just constantly snapping away. And he does have an Instagram, and I check it every now and then to see if I'm going to show up on there. But yeah, at no point has he asked anybody. I'm pretty sure he doesn't listen to this show, but if you do, you might want to ask the rest of the team. This is probably not how I want to say that to him. I'll probably just tell him directly at some point. But yeah, nobody's complained yet. But because I guess the bar is a public place, but he also uses a flash, so you're constantly getting blinded if you're looking anywhere. Because that's the big thing now is using like old style non-digital cameras. So he's shooting with film, using old school flashes and stuff like that. Because he, maybe has ISO 100 film in there or something like that. So he's got to use a flash. I don't know.
I had a big debate with someone a while ago, and it became like an argument. But like what was going on was he was recording. He was trying to record the person speaking, but he was picking it at an angle where it was catching the audience. And this was in a private setting. And I was like, hey, you might want to consider asking permission, or at least just tilting the camera so it doesn't get audience people and it just gets the speaker, because obviously the speaker's consented, right? Or knows that he's being recorded, and not you don't want to get the audience. And he's like, why should I do that? And I'm like, it's just like a thing, like just so I was kind of like, okay, maybe am I like I was questioning myself. I'm like, is this like, what is going on here? So
that's what we call oppositional defiance disorder, and it's generally something we see in children. Yeah, defensiveness, and the more colloquial term, getting defensive, right?
I was trying to be nice about it. But.
Mm-hmm.
So at the conference I was just in, and this is pretty common, like a lot of people from the conferences want B-roll. So there was somebody like while the speaker was speaking, just slowly walking through the crowd, shooting the crowd. And which I think is really dangerous, because if it's a talk right after lunch, like half those people are going to be like, like nodding off in their seats, right? That'll be embarrassing. Like I don't want to be in somebody's B-roll, like with my mouth open and my eyes closed. But yeah, it's a conversation that needs to be had, because clearly to the hired photographers, like they don't think anything of it. They're like, oh, I need to go get B-roll. That includes audience.
A lot of conferences, though, do have it in their, terms and, you're signing up for this conference, and you may be, and I don't know if they allow you to opt out, but I know when I was working for an events company, it was in there. You're agreeing to have your likeness used on film. So that's a little different, but the public thing, it's concerning. And I was at an event on Monday, and there was a woman sitting next to me. It was a private event, and I have seen my husband to pose for a picture, and on his behalf, I got furious, and then I'm like, simmer down.
That's awkward.
Not my issue. Like, he's a grown man, but I got mad. Like,
Well, and I think they
uh,
usually give us guidelines as media when we're at
Yeah.
at conferences where it's considered public and where public is and where we're allowed to film and where we're not allowed to film. And so I
Yeah.
think we may need to, as we move into the age of the everybody's an influencer and making content now, I would guess that conferences are going to have to start giving those guidelines to everybody. Like, hey,
I
you
think
Yeah.
it's
can,
just a
here's
societal thing where people believe because you carry a little camera around on your little mini computer that goes in your pocket or your purse or your backpack, people believe they have the right to film everything. And it's a societal thing, and it's a huge issue that we definitely don't have time for.
It's a generational thing, actually. So like the younger generation is like totally open. I mean, they share
Well,
their
and
license, driver's license, all that kind of stuff.
I don't think people mean to be disrespectful. I think they're just like when you
Yeah.
lived in a generation where you had a cell
Oblivious. Yeah.
phone starting in 5th grade and like taking videos of yourself as the norm. Yeah, I just think the conferences need to kind of modernize what they do and tell people where it is and is not okay to film and have kind of signs. Signs would be nice. Not that people always read them, but because I
Right.
always wonder myself, right? We're in media, we're supposed to create content at conferences. So I'm always like, is it okay to film here? Is this weird? Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'd
Just
appreciate
keep
guidance.
keep it under that my 6th grade reading level, so I can understand the sign.
No photo.
You're at least
Pictures.
8.
So I have seen conferences experiment with giving you something to wear if you don't want to be photographed.
Oh.
Something visible. And making sure everybody's aware. Like you have like a no photos pin or something like that. That makes it pretty clear that that's maybe an option that it's something we've considered for our conferences. We haven't done it, but yeah, there's ways to just kind of visually signal, hey, like I don't want to be in any photos. Or you can just Jack Recider it, right, Eamon?
Good, yeah.
And have extensive face coverings
Yeah.
anytime you're in public. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Number 2, not a whole lot to talk about there. Wiz has one now. Waza, which I think is also like an MDM tool. I want to say that's what XDR and SIM. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. But they also have a CVE tool now. So I've seen a lot of vendors kind of building these databases. It's interesting. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure I understand the rationale behind them building this. Like CVE details exists and does a lot of the same stuff.
I don't know. It was almost like there was like this centralized place for them, and like there was an issue with that, and
There's some
I
issues.
don't know why.
Yeah. Maybe that's. I mean, it looks like might have taken longer than that to build, but maybe not. Maybe they just threw it together because that's been a month or 2 now since that's happened. I think it was right before RSA, maybe.
Yeah, it was like maybe a month before RSA.
Yeah. Number 4, I found interesting. So this is local to me, but someone accused of taking part in a attempted murder. This guy was going to go to jail for attempted murder, and then they finally pulled in like a DFIR person to analyze the phone and found its phone provided an alibi that he was physically not in the location where this happened, and he was at his girlfriend's house like he had been telling the police for the last 4 years. And this is just kind of like in 2025, really? Or like I'm kind of baffled that this isn't, not that I really know anything about how these cases work and how, maybe you have to have enough money to pull in somebody to do DFIR on your, like, I thought this is something that the police would do. Like this would be part of the investigation that they would handle. But the defense attorney had to go hire a DFIR guy to look at the phone and pull the evidence. And like, can't you get that from cell towers and stuff like that? Isn't it pretty standard to get a warrant to get information on where the phone is connecting to the cell towers? But
I'm wondering if
yeah,
the police had his phone, so he couldn't get access to his phone. So then he would be looking at having to
maybe.
get, yeah. And I think this is like, The unfortunate thing about justice is that, one, if the police think that the data on the phone may contradict their current theory of the case
Yeah.
and ability to prove it, they may not necessarily even pursue that evidence, right? And
Yeah.
then, it said he had multiple different attorneys throughout the course of the case. So, guessing maybe public defenders, some type of legal aid. And that's, a lot of times defense depends on what you can spend. And it may be, I hate to say this, but my mom was a public defender for like 13, 14 years. And she was a
Mhm.
phenomenal attorney. She ended up being the assistant attorney general in the state she lived in. But it's generally your first job out of law school, right? Not always the
Mhm.
most qualified attorneys. And so, yeah, I think not all attorneys would know to seek this kind of information. And the state is not always required to be overly, make it easy to get, I guess I should say.
What
Yeah,
happened to like
yeah.
proof beyond the reasonable doubt? Like it's crazy.
Welcome to our current justice system.
Yeah, I found it disturbing. 20-year-old kid, almost going to jail for attempted murder and was like nowhere near this stuff going on. And we used 20-year-old DFIR techniques to provide his alibi. But only 4 years after this case has been going on, and he's almost gone to jail. So
4 years, that poor kid. Imagine what
baffling
this has done
to me.
him and his family.
Yes. So he was 16 when this stuff started. Like when the actual incident occurred, he was a minor. So
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it says it has taken 4 years for his innocence to come to light in evidence that was seized 4 years ago. And his evidence has been on those phones for 4 years. So my bet would be, one, cop seized the phone. Two, using Cellbrite probably locked him out of his iCloud account.
We bring Cellbrite back into the.
I'm just saying. Well, that's what they probably used.
No, you're probably right.
Locked him out of his iCloud account, so he couldn't get to the phone, and it probably took them that long to get them to turn it back over to a digital forensics expert. So
I could find out. I know exactly who would know. I know the folks who do private DFIR stuff here. And the police hire them all the time, farm stuff out to them, so they would know.
We should get somebody to do an interview on that, because I think a lot of people would like to know how those things work and how to best protect yourself in the event that you're accused of attempted murder and you didn't do it.
Yeah. So number 5 here is just a great list of threat detection resources from Alex Teixeira on LinkedIn. So not a whole lot to talk about there. I just always like when I find a big list of good resources on stuff like that, especially security operations related stuff. I like to share it. And then number 6, this is an interesting one. Kind of the TLDR of this. This is the name of the article. It's from the Record. The $200,000 Zoom call, and the TLDR of it is you can set up Zoom to control someone's computer remotely. So you can use Zoom like you would use TeamViewer or AnyDesk to control someone else's computer. And somebody just managed to use Zoom in such a way. Like I want to say they built an application, and the way they named the application something misleading. And they basically got somebody to click OK on the thing that allowed them to take over their computer. And then they stole crypto from them, is the TLDR of this thing. But a very creative case, like this isn't a vulnerability in Zoom. This is social engineering. And just, kind of scary. Like if you didn't know Zoom could do that, the Zoom you have installed in your computer right now can be used to give someone else control of your PC. If you have an active session going on. I don't think they retain that like a TeamViewer or AnyDesk. I don't think they retain that after you hang up in the call, but during the call, for sure.
So like they pushed an app to the marketplace or something like that and got the victim to click it?
Yeah, I read this a while ago. I've already forgotten.
That's very interesting.
It might have been even simpler than that, but something like that. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, people
This is
think it's just
interesting.
requesting permission to share my screen, but it's actually requesting permission to remotely control your desktop,
Wow.
which includes full access to files. So any wallets, seed phrases, files, anything you've got on your file system. Yeah, so really
The
low
host.
tech.
Oh, basically, the host asked somebody to talk about his company, and can you give us a demo? And so he's like, "Oh, eager, just click a demo." And just click, click, click. And so he clicked through to the prompt to allow. So that's fascinating.
But I thought
He
with
doesn't
remote,
even remember clicking OK on the thing that gave up access
Wow.
to his system.
I would think that, I don't know. Something about this is strange in that I'm pretty sure when you give somebody access to like control, because when you do that on Zoom, it asks you if you want to let them control your mouse, and you can say yes, but they control your mouse on your desktop, so he should have been able to see whatever they were doing. I don't know.
Well, no. So
Probably
it also just gives you like file access. So you can just open up a file browser that is now that other person's file browser.
right without them seeing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You just like an SMB share or something like that. You can now just see those files and browse those files and download those files. Yeah, and not using the GUI at all. Like in the Zoom interface, you will have access to those files.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Want to test it?
I know. That's what I was like. We need to set up a Zoom call for after this call.
I would love to. So that's something I would love to do is do some videos where we actually take some of these hacks and we try and recreate them. Just to see how they work, just to understand better how they work. Don't have time for that today, though. Moving on, we've got two interesting essays here. The first one is basically this observation that most AI startups are just wrappers for ChatGPT and stuff like that, like a very thin veneer on top of one of the existing services, and they're just using that service via API. So you could just use ChatGPT directly if you learn a little bit more prompting, or if you want to automate something or create a custom GPT, but you're going to pay like 1,000x markup for one of these tools that, is just a wrapper for ChatGPT. So the prediction is 99% of AI startups will be dead by 2026 because they're just these basic wrappers, and eventually ChatGPT and Claude and all those will make it easy enough to do it directly that they'll get displaced. And the irony is the author of this essay is also selling a product that looks a lot like a wrapper for a foundation model.
I mean, this is basically the hyperscaler cloud provider business model. So
it is.
Shit.
It is. Yeah, we've already seen it with cloud over the last 15, 20 years now.
Yeah. But there's still, I think, again, it goes back to taste. There's still always room for best of breed. There's a bunch of stuff that's easier to do with AWS's native tools and Azure's native tools, but you don't because your taste likes something else. So yes, 99% of most startups and most new industries go away because they're just wrappers. You could say that about all of the transportation startups that were just using Google and Apple Maps and just built something on top of them. I remember back when the Uber and Lyft IPOs happened because I was at SVB, and it was a lot of that. There were like 15 other ride sharing and kid sharing and scooter sharing services that all died off.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And how many survived?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 3.
I like this article. Oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You want to hear more on this, or I like this article. Like it does point out some interesting things. What's fascinating though, like having seen both sides of the equation, like, yes, a lot of people are relying on these big providers for AI compute. But there's a couple big shifts that can happen really quickly in the next few years, is where AI compute becomes super cheap to use, or people or new AI models, like people take models in-house. They're able to use the models in-house. And at the end of the day, when the dust settles, the differentiator, I think what I'm seeing for a lot of these leading companies, in fact, I just saw something in the airport called Forbes AI 50. So like now Forbes has a list. So
Of course they do.
yeah, I think what I'm seeing is it's not the AI itself, it's how you build around the AI. Because what's happening now is like, okay, AI is being used in the workplace and you have these power users like using the tool. But now you're ending up with now a lot of extra stuff with the AI. Like take a look at projects. Like my AI chat history is huge. I have to search my own chat history to find out where I was. And now organizing it and the kind of like, so now the interface, I think I guess the wrapper at the end of the day, how easy your tool is to use so you could access the AI knowledge is the differentiator, not necessarily AI underneath, because that's being swapped out. So I think that's a big thing right now.
It's a good point. Like, if I'm doing something in Notion and I need AI, I'm going to use the AI in the Notion. If I need to generate an image and I'm already working inside Canva and I already pay for Canva, I'm going to use AI from within Canva, even though I could just switch a tab, generate the image, copy, paste in. Like, yeah, a lot of it is just integrating AI into the applications we already use, which I think he's still kind of right. Like a lot of these startups are going to be dead because instead of using your special like presentation generator, like when it's built into PowerPoint or it's built into Google Slides, that's going to kill your product because I already pay for those things.
Yeah. And you don't care where Notion gets its AI, right? Or Canva, where it gets its AI, whether it's using third party or in-house. You don't care. You just want it done, right?
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. To a certain extent, they don't care because at the end of the day, a lot of these companies are cloud computing providers.
They're just going to go with the cheapest. Yeah. So the next two, I think those are big enough. I'm just turning those into future topic segments. So does the SOC 2 need to die and least privilege is dead? Each of those can be a topic segment. So I put them on my list for topic segment ideas, and we'll just jump straight to the squirrel story. And and this is amazing. So this is, I think originally looking at the UI, this was originally posted on LinkedIn by Hirsch Tolani, but I came across it on one of my favorite Instagram accounts, which is MBA-ish. So it's MBA_ISH. Has some great content, very sarcastic, kind of makes fun of enterprise tropes and tech bro type tropes and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, to read it, this is a fund manager at Tolani Investment Partnerships, Hirsch Tolani, talking about McKinsey's relationship with Warner Brothers and Discovery and the insane money they paid them for like brand management and strategy consulting and stuff like that. So in 2022, McKinsey was paid $55 million to advise Warner Brothers to combine with Discovery. And then between 2022 and 2025, they charged them $37 million to advise the company to change HBO to HBO Max, then to Max, then back to HBO Max. Just those brand changes that drove their customers nuts. They paid $37 million for that and just came around full circle. And then in 2025, they billed Warner Brothers Discovery an additional $63 million to determine that Warner Brothers and Discovery should split up. After getting paid $55 million to tell them they should get together just 3 years prior.
Wow.
You've been an analyst. You know how that works.
But not at this scale. Like these numbers are insane.
Well, like, I guess it depends on what the ARR of Warner Brothers Discover is, right?
Like there must be some hourly billing here, and I'm racking my brain trying to figure out how to rack up those kinds of hours to get to $55 million plus $63 million. Like I imagine they're doing a lot of the due diligence maybe for the deal to connect and maybe it's like a full service thing where they're like handling the whole acquisition for them.
I'd like to see the meeting notes for some of these meetings. That'd be like fascinating.
Just in context, total revenue for 2024.
That is important. Yeah. for context.
38.34 billion. So it's
Drop in the bucket.
Is
Yeah,
it
like
important
0.1%.
or couldn't we spend that
1%?
money on something a little more impactful?
Maybe a
Like
movie about
Weird
this whole
After
thing.
Hours.
Yeah, there you go.
Like at least none of their platforms are showing me ads, even though I'm already paying for a subscription, which I think it was Hulu that started doing that recently.
Netflix too,
I was
unless you pay for the crazy one.
I was already at the don't show me ads tier, and then something happened, and now all of a sudden I'm seeing ads.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh God.
These
Well,
companies
Prime-
are
so much.
so lucky I'm too lazy to go through my credit card statements.
They have an app for that.
They can't. No, that's not luck. That's not luck, Jackie. That is absolutely calculated.
But they do have an app for that now to identify your dormant subscriptions and turn
there's a
them
bunch of those, like save you money on subscriptions you're not using. Yeah, except I worry about some of those because then they integrate with stuff and you're giving them access to. Yeah, I worry about where they're selling that
stuff
data.
on my calendar to be like, check this subscription, check that subscription. So I just am.
Yeah, remember when the unsubscribe plugin for Gmail ended up selling your data to Uber so that they could see when people signed up for Lyft?
Wow.
Kind of a similar situation.
I did not know that. That's really lovely.
They would unsubscribe you from newsletters and stuff, but because they had access to your inbox, they could basically sell queries through all your email without your knowledge.
Yay, Peter Thiel.
All right, and on that note,
now that we're all on a list somewhere.
We're all on lots of lists everywhere. It's good. It's good.
Yeah, but before somebody uses Celebrate on my phone, I'm going to end this podcast. Thanks, Jackie, Katie, Eamon. Today was a blast. I hope some of you can join me tomorrow when we interview Dave Lewis, which is going to confuse people listening because you've already heard that interview if by the time you get to this bit. But chronologically,
we've invented a time machine here on ESW.
Go watch Rocky Horror if you don't understand.
All right. And a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Next week is a holiday week, Independence Day here in the US. So we'll be rebroadcasting some of the interviews we did at Deniverse this year. And then after that, we're back to the normal layout, I think for 4 weeks. And then it's Black Hat. So see you week after next.